Hi everyone, I'm Chef Cindy Mojica. I am the culinary instructor for the Silver Fork program here at the Center on Halstead. And today we have yet another video for our advanced series. So right now I'm going to tell you it's mid-April, and what that means is spring has sprung. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about spring products and produce that we can get right now in Chicago. I'm going to go over some identification. I'm going to talk about how we store these things and how we process them. And then I'll put together a dish at the end of it. But we live in a very interesting climate where we can get some things during spring. And spring, when I say spring, what do you think of? What color maybe do you think of? Green, right? So green, beautiful, tender, right? Spring is about new life and things just coming back to life after winter, right? So spring is about tender, green things. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about tender green things, right? And specialty things that we can get, again, only for a short period of time, and how we store them, how we process them. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of the products first, identify them all, and then I will show you how to process each one separately. So the first thing I'm going to show you is, these are fresh chickpeas, or garbanzos, however you want to say it, right? There they are. That's what they look like, fresh. We're not used to seeing that, right? We're used to seeing them kind of brown, dry, canned. That's the most popular one. But they actually come in these tiny little pods. And there's usually one, maybe two per, okay? And again, I will show you how to do this, but these are fresh chickpeas. That's what they look like, right? Right off the vine. That's what they look like. I'm going to show you how to shuck these, clean them, cook them in a second. But I just want you to see that's what they look like. And they're little pods. Exciting, right? Next guy I have is called fava beans. Fava beans. Right, these are super prized when they come in spring. Now these, because it's early on in the season, right? These are a little short even. They can get about, 6 inches, 8 inches long. These are pretty short. This is probably about 4 inches. All right. Now inside these pods are where the fava beans live. When they're super young, you can actually eat the pod. You have to still cook it, usually grilled. All right. But when they're a little bit more mature, not so much, all right? So I'm going to show you how to shuck these and clean these, because anybody who works in a restaurant that's going to get fresh stuff from a farm in particular, you're definitely going to need to clean fava beans. And they're kind of a pain, but I'm going to show you a couple tricks to hopefully help you out, all right? So fava beans, again, these are super, super exciting when they come in for spring, because again, they're only around for a very short period of time. Next thing we got, asparagus. All right, I'm sure most of you have seen asparagus around, right? It comes straight out of the ground, just like this. And then you trim them, all right? Now they come in different sizes. Beginning of the season, they'll usually come what we call pencil, all right? They're pretty thin, all right? As the season goes on, they'll get a little bit thicker. These are kind of more jumbo or standard, okay? Asparagus. Again, they go straight out of the ground like this. And actually, if you leave them for long enough, these tips will start to flower. They have a beautiful purple flower that comes out of them. All right? Now, just so you know, if you ever see a white asparagus, okay, they do show up. What it is they're the exact same plant, except they keep covering them with dirt. And then sometimes they might put another cover on it. And what that does is it doesn't let them create the green chlorophyll that happens. All right? So they taste a little bit more mild. You still get like the texture of an asparagus, but it's just white. So it doesn't have exposure to the sun. The sun is what helps it get this beautiful green color. Okay, just so you know. All right, but asparagus, again, I'm going to show you how to do stuff with this, how to process it. But asparagus is a really exciting one that comes out in spring, and it hangs out for a little bit, right? But spring is when they first really start coming in, and it's always very fun. The next guy I have is kale. Now I'm sure you're saying, Chef, I can get kale all the time. Yeah, you can get one kind of kale all the time. But lacando, or black kale as it's often called, right? This guy starts coming in right around now. And it hangs out for a while, probably into early summer, okay? That's really when the prime time happens, but right now they're super dark and green. And the reason that makes this so special is that it has such a much more tender flavor to it. If you've ever had kale, right, and it's a little undercooked, it's really tough. You might even get gassy, right? But black kale, right, is a lot more tender, and it's a little bit more flavorful because of that dark green color. Okay, so black kale, Lakandu kale, it's a little bit hard to find. I'm seeing it more and more in stores now. So if you see it out there, it is inexpensive and super tender and flavorful. Now, next one I have up, sugar snap peas. Oh, yeah. Now, again, sugar snap peas, you can kind of find all year round. However, that doesn't mean you should get them. A lot of the things I'm showing you, just because you can get it year round, doesn't mean you should. I can find asparagus in the middle of winter. I don't want to eat that asparagus. I want to eat them now, right? When they're coming up, when they're everywhere, when it's super inexpensive, because now is the season for it. Okay, so the reason I'm showing you all this spring stuff is because it's the season for it. This is when you should be buying it. Don't buy stuff out of season. It's terrible. Have you ever seen asparagus in the middle of winter? It's sad. It makes me sad to look at it. Okay, so sugar snap peas is something you can buy pretty often, right? Pretty all the time. But when they're out of season, when it's no longer spring or even into mid-summer, they don't look so hot, right? So sugar snap peas. You eat them whole, just like this, right? They're very tender on the outside, and they do have peas on the inside. However, the peas are so small and tender, you can eat them just like this. Not to be confused with snow peas, which are flatter. They look very similar, but they're very, very flat, right? See how this is kind of nice round? Right? They're very, very flat, and the little peas are almost undetectable on the inside. And that's usually what you'll find in like a stir fry or something. Totally fine. Those are great, but I just don't want you to confuse a snap pea with a snow pea. They're different. Again, those are things you can kind of find all year round. Doesn't mean you should have them all year round. All right, the next big thing that's coming out, artichokes. Now, some of you have maybe never seen a whole artichoke, right? You can definitely get them canned all year round, marinated. That's fine. They've been processed, cleaned, cooked, marinated, preserved. That's fine. However, fresh, new artichoke like this, they're coming up now. You can find them smaller. This is one variety. There's a lot larger. Okay. Now this is another one that it comes straight out of the ground just like this. It's got a very long stem, and they usually trim it. Okay. If we left this in the ground, the flower would come out of it. It looks like a thistle, bright purple. It's really cool. Okay. When we clean them, you'll kind of see where that thistle kind of comes out of. Okay. But these are delicious. Okay, they're a bit of a pain to clean, but again, if you work in a restaurant, anytime you're getting fresh stuff, you're probably going to get fresh artichokes, and you're probably going to have to clean them. I've got two. I'm going to show you how. Next up, the prize. These are called sunchokes. Okay, now, sunchokes, or sometimes they're referred to as Jerusalem artichokes. However, it's not an artichoke at all. That was a translation issue when they first started coming over, right? They're actually the root of a sunflower. What? They come out in spring right now. This is great. These are nice and clean, which is awesome. Okay? Now, there are a couple ways you can process these. You can peel these, cook them, right? You would peel them because you don't want the brown. Okay? But because they're so knobby, it's kind of a pain in the butt. All right. You could cook them. You can slice them on a mandolin really thin and just fry them and make sunchoke chips. So good. They're very sweet and very tender, and it's almost indescribable. They're a little bit pricey. I'm not going to lie to you. Okay. They can be. These are about $5 a pound. Okay. But I got some so I can show them to you because they're so cool, and they again only show up for a very short period of time. So when it's sunchoke season, get on it because they're so good. All right, one more here. Radishes. Oh my God. I know what you're thinking again. Chef, why do you keep showing me this stuff I can find all over? Well, the thing is radishes really start showing up right now. Okay. Now these guys are huge that I found. All right. This, I believe, is a cherry red. There's more than one kind of radish. There's a lot of different kinds of radishes, guys, and they show up periodically through spring. Okay? Okay, you've got French breakfast radishes. You've got some that are called Easter eggs. There's some called gumballs. There's so many different types of radishes. Now, radishes are beautiful because not only do they have a lot of color, but they should have a lot of flavor. They should be a little bit spicy and also cooling and crisp, right? Because they're mostly water. Okay? They should have a little bit of crunch, everything like that. If you are having a radish that doesn't taste like anything, that radish is crap. All right? Just so you know. Pardon my language. Okay? But go out there, get some radishes. Now, the reason I wanted to show you radishes on top of that, because not only am I going to use them, okay, springtime, radishes, but you can also eat the greens, okay? The green part is delicious. However, okay, this is the only one I won't show you really how to process, so I'm going to talk you through it right now. Whenever you get something that has a green attached to it, okay, whether it be radish, whether it be carrots with those long, tops, even leeks, right, that have that green part, you should always, as soon as you get them, separate them. Separate the green from the other part, okay? The reason you want to do that is the longer it sits with the greens, right, the more time the greens have to pull moisture away from your product, right, whether it be your carrot, your radish, or even your leek, okay? So you can eat these, you can cook them, you can shred them up and put them in a salad, whatever you like, but just separate them as soon as you get them, okay? Treat this like you would any lettuce, green, anything like that. Wash them, wrap them up, put them away. Store this nice and neat. It can just be in the fridge. It works great, but just make sure you separate. Again, the longer they hang out together, the drier this becomes and the sadder this becomes, okay? Just so you know. Now, last but certainly not least, the gem, the gold nugget of the Midwest. Ramps. Now, ramps are a wild spring onion, okay? They're actually why Chicago is named Chicago. It comes from a native word for this stinky onion. There used to be tons of them all over. This is a problem because people are foraging them so much that they were kind of endangered for a little while there. But they're coming back, people farm them, right? Now, the beauty. So these are very young, okay, just so you know. It's the very beginning of the season. They're hard to get, but I managed to get a few, okay? So what I want you to notice about a ramp is that these leaves, right, are kind of wide and flat, okay? And then the bottom, okay, when they're a little bit older, you'll see a little bit of purple and you'll be almost like a spring onion, right? A little bit of bulbousness in the bottom. Now, what makes these so special is they're very pungent, right? They have a very sharp, oniony smell, but not like a traditional onion, okay? It's not going to make you cry, per se, okay? It's just very unique, okay? So, the other part is that the bottoms of these are kind of tough, right? So you're not going to eat these raw, per se, and if you do, you got to slice them really, really thin in order to eat them just like they are. Again, they're quite pungent, especially the bottom, so it's pretty sharp. You're always going to give them a little bit of a saute. The most common thing that you'll see with the bottoms being done, okay, is you'll pickle them, and they pickle beautifully. Again, they're a little bit sharp, they're very pungent, but somehow sweet. It's magic, guys. If you can find ramps in the springtime, oh, please get some. They're so good. All right? Now, the tops, on the other hand, okay, what you'll normally do is, again, you're going to separate them. You're going to separate the bottoms from the tops. Okay? The tops, because they're so leafy and tender, you can slice those and put them into stuff very easily for a lot of sharp, delicious goodness. Okay? You can even make a pesto out of them, right? I know pesto, you think it's made out of basil. You can make pesto out of anything, guys. Parsley, ramps, any type of herb you got, right? But you'll get a nice pungenty goodness from this. You can slice it up and just use it like an herb and put it on top of salads, whatever you want, okay? You can even saute them into pasta. Oh my God, endless possibilities, guys. I can't tell you how excited I get for ramp season every year and how hard it is to get it for me. But I got some just to show you guys, okay? So again, if you want to look it up online, just Google ramps, spelled like a ramp, R-A-M-P, okay? This is why Chicago is Chicago, right? Ramps. All right, so let's start with the chickpeas. it's actually pretty easy to process these. Okay, I got lots of chickpeas, okay? So as, I think you can see this on camera, I hope so. You see this little seam right there? Right? All you have to do is kind of pull them apart. And again, because these are young, you know, some of these might be pretty small. Don't love that one. Let's find a good one. But it's mostly that you want to find that seam and kind of just pull it apart. Oh yeah, this is a good one. Right? And there are chickpeas. So you just pull them out. They're usually attached, right? And there they are. Kind of almost look like a little weird green brain. Okay. There's another one. Again, there's usually only about 1 to 2 per pod. And it takes a little while. This is definitely a labor of love. You don't see it very often. Now, they're very fresh. When they're fresh like this and young, you can eat them raw. They taste kind of like a fresh pea, okay? But a little bit different. All right? So I just want to show you how we're going to shuck these. I'm going to sit here and shuck these. Just so you know, this is how much I care about you guys. I still have a little bit of PTSD from a restaurant I worked at as a young culinarian out of culinary school. I had to shuck these for about 8 hours one day straight. This is all I did was clean these chickpeas. So I'm trying not to get triggered, but all right, so I'm going to sit here and I'm going to shuck all these and we're going to look at them in a second. Done shucking. All of them are gone now. This is all I got. All right, again, remember that this is still very early in the season, so I had a lot of small ones come out. Okay, if we wait a couple more weeks, they would mostly all be like this. Okay, so that's what I got. Here are all my shells. Just going to toss those. And that took me a while, and again, not a high yield off of these. Now, whenever you're going to use fresh chickpeas, you're not going to use, like, this is not an order's worth, right? It takes a while to process. So you're just only going to use a small amount and kind of showcase them as something that's very special. And you can even see that my finger's a little bit black because the outside, right, the pods are a little bit fuzzy and they have a little bit of stickiness to them, so your fingers kind of get a little bit sticky, but that's okay. I'm going to go wash my hands and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to cook these off. All right, so what I'm going to do to cook these chickpeas is I'm going to blanch them. Okay, I'm sure you've heard the term before, but what it is we're going to quickly cook them in boiling water. I'm going to salt the water once it comes up, and then we're just going to cook till just tender. Okay, lots of space, lots of all this stuff. Okay, I'm going to save a few. I'm going to leave them raw. Just a little pinch because I'm going to use it for another dish. And I kind of like the way they taste right now. Super fresh. I'm going to take out some of the really big ones. Right, just leave some of these really young guys so we can get that greeny flavor. Now, while we wait for this to come up, okay, understand that green, right, we're trying to celebrate all these green flavors, textures, and all those things. So we don't want to over-process or overcook anything because then we lose a lot of that bright green, fresh flavors that we want. Okay? So a lot of this stuff is going to be quicker cooking. Okay? Preserving that green, preserving the textures as much as possible. So I'm going to throw some salt in here. Good pinch of salt. Want the water to be fairly briny because again it's going to cook so quickly that I want to impart some flavor, some saltiness. So I'm going to put it into this. Now this is a pasta basket, okay? Not going to lie to you. It's a pasta basket. It's what I have. The reason I'm putting it in a basket though, because there are other types of wire baskets that you can fit perfectly into a pot, but this is what I have. Okay? Is that way I can pull them all out, put them all in and pull them all out at the same time, okay? Even cooking. Then, as soon as they come out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it in some ice water, right? And what that does is, not only does it stop the cooking, all right, the heat will stop, but it also helps preserve that beautiful green color, because if we just left it, right, we would lose some of that bright green color. Okay, so now you can see my water's boiling away. I'm going to put this in. See, notice that the water calms down, right? Because the temperature has changed, the temperature has dropped. Because even though those chickpeas are room temperature, it's still cooler than the boiling water. Right? So I'm just going to let that kind of bubble for a little bit. As soon as that water kind of comes up to a full boil, that's pretty much when I'm going to pull them out. Maybe give them a few seconds after that. And that's pretty much blanching, is that hot water shocking into the cold to stop the cooking and preserve texture and color. Okay? And you're going to see me do it with a couple of things today. So I'm going to let that go. Right? Again, because they're so young, that's why I'm just blanching them. If they were a little bit older, a little bit bigger, I might cook them very slowly in water till they're all nice and tender. You definitely lose a lot of color there, but it depends. Okay? So it's bubbling full on now. Bubbling, bubbling. You can tell by looking at them if they've loosened up a little bit. And there we go. Okay. Still nice and bright green, if you can see. Okay. I'm going to take it from here. I'm shaking off excess water and then right into my ice bath. I'm going to turn off my boiling water. I'm going to use this water again. Okay, because everything that I'm making today that's going to be blanched, I'm not worried about flavors transferring. It's going to be so fast. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave them in the ice water to completely cool. Just because they're in the ice water, they're sitting in there, doesn't mean they've completely cooled off, right? You need to give them a few minutes to completely stop cooking. Okay. Once that's done, I can pull them out, put them in a container, I can throw them in the fridge, they're good to go. Okay. But I just want to make sure, and the way sometimes you can tell is you can stick your hand in the ice water, you can feel the heat that comes off of them sometimes, especially if they're bigger. Okay. You see how nice and bright green. They've changed a little bit. They're almost even a little bit greener, right? That's what we want. We want to celebrate that green. We want to celebrate whatever little texture we can get off of it. Okay, so it's been a few minutes and they're completely cold now, and you can see nice bright green. Okay, nice and shiny from the water. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep these in the container. I'm going to throw them in the fridge for now just to keep them cool. And then we'll do stuff with them later. Okay, so now I'm going to jump ahead to the artichoke. The reason I'm going to jump to the artichoke is that they take longer to process and they have a longer cooking time. So I want them to kind of be ready with everything else. So you need a lot of things to do artichokes. If you are working in a restaurant where you're doing this, ask your chef how he wants you or she wants you to do it. Okay? I'm going to show you how the way I learned. This works for me, works great. Okay, so things you're going to need. Gloves, definitely going to need gloves, otherwise your hands are going to turn black, they're sticky, and artichokes can be very pokey, so gloves are important. You're going to need a metal spoon. What do you need a metal spoon for, Chef? I'll show you in a second. Definitely need a knife. You're also going to need a serrated knife. I recommend it to you absolutely positively. It helps. You'll see why. You're going to need a paring knife. And you're going to need a peeler. Okay? This will all make sense in a moment. I'm going to throw on some gloves. And I'm just doing 2. Okay? But once you kind of start doing them, you definitely get into a flow. But gloves are très important. The other thing that I have here is just some plain water that I'm going to make into acidulated water. What's acidulated water? It's acidic water. Right? The reason we're going to do this, okay, I'm going to throw lemon. I'm just going to cut it in half. I'm going to squeeze the lemon juice in there, and then I'm going to drop the whole lemon in there as well. All right. The reason you want to do this is if you let artichokes just sit out in the air, they oxidize, meaning they'll turn black, and it's just not attractive. Okay. If you use acidulated water, right, citrusy, acidy water, keeps them from browning. Right. Same thing with if you did like apples, right? If you ever cut apples and leave it out after you've peeled them and all that, and they start going brown, you throw them in some acidulated water. Works great from keeping them from browning. Okay. Lemon is the most common way to do it. You can even buy citric acid in powder form. Just use a little bit of that if you, for some reason, you don't want to waste the lemon. Okay. Okay, so I've got that. Got my artichoke. Here's where we're going to start. I want to trim the stem a little bit. Okay. Next thing I want to do is I want to take off some of these outer leaves. And I want to go, don't get crazy. Don't be like, I'm just going to start all the way back here and start ripping off. Don't. Okay? Start with the outer, work your way in. And you're just going to pull them off. Right? They're tough leaves. They're not very tasty. Right. Now I've had chefs, these guys are old school, who made me do this all with a paring knife. I wasn't allowed to tear. That's just ridiculous, I think. But you'll see why the paring knife is important though. Okay. So I want to keep going. And you see as we go, the leaves are going to change. You're going to get more like yellowy towards up here. Once we get up about here, right, when we get more yellow on the leaves, that's when I'll stop. Right. Now we're getting more tender leaves. That's what we want. Yeah, there we go. Some leaves are okay. Because once you get on the inner side, that's where they become more tender. Okay, so I'm about there. Okay. Now, I don't think I can show you quite yet. Well, we'll get there. I'll show you the choking side. Okay, so now, pull it all that way. Now you see how it's kind of rough around the edges? Okay, that's what I'm going to use my paring knife for. And my peeler. Okay. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to peel the stem because, and I think you can see how fibrous it is. If we don't peel that outer area, it's going to be very, very tough. And as we know, artichokes should be tender. Okay? So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take my peeler. I'm just going to peel down my stem. Again, I've had chefs who say you can only do it with a paring knife. Well, it's going to take me a million years to do it that way. So I'm just going to use my peeler. Okay. Having a fresh, sharp peeler for spring especially is one of the best things that you can invest in, for sure. Guys, get yourself a nice Y peeler. This is a Y peeler, it's shaped like a Y. Okay. It makes a huge difference. Okay. So what I'm looking for is, see how much paler and smoother that is? Right? That's what I'm looking for. Right? And you can kind of tell as you're peeling if it needs to be peeled more, if it's still very stringy. I'm pretty happy with it. Right? You can even take your peeler and kind of do this underside a little bit. And this is when I'll switch back and forth, okay? So I'll go here, and I'm going to grab my paring knife, and I'm going to go around. This is where it takes a little bit of practice. And I'm just going to clean up that edge so it's nice and smooth. Right? It's not attractive to have a rough edge like we just had. Right? It looks very messy. It won't cook evenly. Right? It should look nice and smooth. And all I did was just run. It takes practice. You guys should just practice. Right? I'm going to take this. See how I still have some leaves here? All right, some tough green. I'm going to take my paring knife and just go in. Right? If there's some stringiness that wants to come along, great, pull it off. Right? I'm going a little bit fast. Maybe I'll go a little slower for the next one that I do. Or maybe I'll go faster. I don't know. Right? Basically, I'm just following the shape and making sure I'm getting anything that looks a little tough. There we go. Now you want to be careful because once you start peeling away the stem, it's very thin and can break very easily. Okay. I've spent a lot of time working with my paring knife. All right. Trim some of this off actually. See, I can see a little bit of dryness in there, in that rot, so I'm just going to trim that off. It's not going to be super tasty to eat. All right. anyways, I spent a lot of time using my paring knife, guys. And I think it's a very good skill to have. So you just got to practice. That's all I'm going to say. Just got to practice. Pay attention to your produce. There we go. See how that's nice and tender looking now? Right? See these sides are nice and smooth. Gotten rid of all this big heavy stuff down at the bottom. All right. We're about halfway there. Stick with me. Okay. So now I'm going to take my serrated knife. Okay. I don't want to use my regular knife. These are very tough leaves. Okay. The serrated knife works best. So you want to grab it, and I'm going to cut right here. Okay. See how you can see the difference between here's the tender part. This is the part we eat, and then this is leaves. Okay. So tender into leaves. Okay. We want to cut all this off. Again, serrated knife, we saw. Okay, so I want to show you the inside because that's the part. All right, you see how that's really thistly, right? Looks like hair almost. You can start to see right in there, that's the purple. So if we let this just grow and flower, it'll turn into big purple flower. Okay? We definitely don't want this. It's just not edible. Okay? We definitely don't want this. It's also not edible. Okay? Oops. Okay. Some of this we can kind of get rid of with our hand, but this is where the spoon comes in. We want to dig all this stuff out. You want to, again, be gentle so you don't break your artichoke. And I'm just digging in here, getting right at the base, scooping out those artichoke, that hair, right? You really want to get in there. And I'm both being firm and gentle, if that makes sense, right? So I'm not trying to scoop away or break up that artichoke too much. I'm just trying to make sure I can get that, all those thistly bits, right? And I'm just going to take my spoon again. I'm just going to, yeah, there we go. Is it the prettiest one I've ever done? Absolutely not. But it'll definitely do for now, just so you guys get the idea, right? And if I want to be, particular, I can go back and kind of clean some of these edges up now that I can see them a little bit better. But I'm going to leave it. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and have you guys watch me do this. Now I'm going to throw this into our acidulated water. The other thing I'm going to do, because the artichoke floats, and if it sits on top, again, it'll start oxidizing. I'm going to take some paper towels. If I was doing a lot of these, maybe I'd have like just a towel, straight up towel that goes sit on top. What that does is, again, it keeps that top wet. All right, so let's cook these artichokes. This is pretty traditional. I'm just going to show you a very basic way to cook them, okay? So I've just got an empty pot. From here, I'm going to put in water. As much as I think it'll need to be covered. Okay? I've got some white wine, some crisp white wine, okay? What I mean by crisp is it's not Chardonnay, it's not what you call oaky or buttery, right? This is just our standard stuff that we use. Just kind of feel it out. There are no measurements really. Not for this at least. Depends how many you're cooking. Throw a little salt in there. Fingers are a little wet, so I'm not going to pinch. I'm going to heat this up. Turn on the heat. Okay. Medium low. I don't want these to boil. Okay. So I'm just going to put them in here. And notice I'm not going to use this acidulated water. Once you've cleaned them, they can sit in the fridge clean like this for a day or two. Okay. But you don't want to use this water. Okay, just like when we do potatoes and we hold them in water, great. Don't use that water again. This water is just for holding everything. Now I can see they're sticking out a little bit. I'm going to grab a little bit more water to make sure. I want them covered. Okay. They need to be completely submerged so that they'll actually cook evenly. Okay. Now, again, artichokes like to float. So you just want to make sure you have just enough cover. All right. Now, the other thing I'm going to show you how to do is something called a cartouche. Okay. Before that comes up, simmers, I'm going to show you this. It's a type of cover that you make with parchment paper. So I've got my half piece of parchment paper right here. I'm going to show you how to make one. So I've got a half piece of parchment paper, right? This full sheet, half sheet, like we always use. What I want to do is, okay, I'm going to take the corner and just fold it down to the next side here. Okay, make a nice firm crease. And then I'm not going to worry about this little extra piece. I'm going to probably cut it off anyway, so I'm not going to make the extra step. Then I'm going to take this corner, bring it to this corner. Okay. And in the same direction, I'm going to bring this farthest corner to the closest corner. Wait, hold on. Yes. Just making sure I'm doing it right. I don't usually do it this slow. All right, bring that over here. Again, towards myself. I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to make real tight here. Okay. Then I'm going to take this and I'm going to measure it against the pot. I'll have you walk over with me. Okay. I'm going to use this tip to match where the center is on the pot, right? And I'm just going to use my finger, hold it in place exactly where I want to cut it, because that's the spot right there. Okay? If it's a little bit bigger than the pot, it's okay. You'll see why. Okay, but I just want to measure. All right, I'm going to cut right there. The other thing I'm going to do is that tip. I'm just going to trim a little bit of that as well. Just the very tip. I'm just going to cut that off. And then what you get, something that's going to fit perfectly. Now what this does is it creates a lid. It keeps the pressure, keeps the heat in there, but it has that hole so it lets a little bit of steam out. It's better than just a plain metal lid on there. Okay? It keeps everything nice and moist, right? While still steaming in a little bit of that pressure. So let's come back over here. You can see me put it on there. Okay? Right on top. All right, a little bit of water will come up. See if it's a little bit bigger, it's okay. In fact, it keeps a little bit of that steam in there as well. And that's it. We're just going to let it hang out. I'm just going to keep an eye on it. Make sure it doesn't, a little bit of movement in the water is okay, a little simmer. Okay, but you don't want to boil. Okay, you want to cook these gently. When I feel like they're ready, I'm going to take a paring knife, just give them a little poke, see if it goes through nice and tender. That's it. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is the sunchokes. Okay, they're just in cold water right now, just like I would a potato. I'm not peeling them this time because I'm not going to make a puree, and I don't mind the brown. I actually want the little bit of texture. It's a very thin skin. Okay, mostly you would peel them so you don't get the brown color, so you get a pure white. And if you look, I've cut this one in half. Right, the inside is this very pretty kind of white texture. Right, I'm actually going to cook this one along with the other ones cut in half because this is so much bigger. The rest of them are about the same size. All right. The reason I don't want to cut them either, because I'll cut them after they're cooked, is that the skin kind of holds them in place. And if you cook them, and let's say you cook them a little too long, they'll fall apart. If I was making a puree, no problem, I wouldn't mind so much. But because I kind of want them whole, I want that texture on the outside, I'm going to cook them whole like I would. And I'm going to treat it, I'm going to say potato because it's very similar. It's a root vegetable. It's got that skin. That skin holds, whatever's inside together so it doesn't flake off. It's not super starchy by any means, but I just definitely don't want to have it fall apart on me. I'm going to do a nice hit of salt, cold water, again, just like I would a potato. I'm going to put this on full blast. Okay, and again, very similar to potato. I want to bring it up to a boil, then I want to turn it down to a simmer, and then I'm going to use a paring knife again to poke it, see if it's ready. Once it's ready, I'm just going to take them out, let them steam, okay? Let them cool down completely, and then I'll do whatever I want with them, okay? So sunchokes, just almost like a potato. Fava bean time, okay? So, I have a small pile here. I've done cases and cases of this. Trust me when I say, this is the best way to do them, okay? And especially when they're longer, you'll see why. So, I'm going to just take one and show you how it's kind of, all right? So normally if you don't do what I do, you're going to have to kind of rip it open, right? They kind of fall apart, and it kind of is a pain to like get those beans out. Right there are the fava beans. Right, you kind of have to, rip them open. They take some time. But if you do what I do, which is I'll take one, and I'll take a peeler, and right along one of the seams, I'll just peel that seam off, right? And now it opens right up, and I can get those favas straight away. Okay? So what I'll often do is, especially if I'm doing a big, big pile of them, is that I'll sit here and I'll just peel. And if I'm doing it with more than one person, which also helps, right? I'll just go through, I'll peel a bunch of them, right? Have them ready to go. If you don't get the full thing off, it's still going to open up pretty easily, but don't be afraid to go again if you need to. Okay. Just right along that seam. This peeler's not super sharp, which doesn't help anybody, right? But it definitely makes it easier. So if let's say I did all those, right? Now I can open these up a lot faster. All right, these are all open now. It goes a lot faster. So again, that's why having a nice sharp peeler at the beginning of spring, you can see how much better it goes. Right. So if there's two of you doing this, it helps one person just go peel through them. All right. The other person starts shucking. By the time you're done peeling, you can help shuck them as well. Okay. So this is step one. Get them out of the pod. I'll show you step two in a second when I'm done with these guys. All right. There's my favas all shucked. That's what they look like. But guess what? This is only step one of 2 or 3, depending on what you're going to do, that you need to do to process these. Okay? So let's go over to the next step. Again, these are my shells. I'm just going to get rid of these. Don't need them for anything. Next step for favas. Okay? I've got my water, boiling, water with salt. I got my favas. I'm going to put them in my basket. Now, quick disclaimer. If I was doing a whole case of these, okay, I would actually separate all the favas by size. I would do small, medium, large, right? See how they're kind of slightly different sizes? Okay. This is such a small amount, I'm not going to worry about it. But if I was doing a very large amount, and these are actually roughly pretty close to size, okay? They all take different cooking times. The large ones will take maybe a minute versus the little itty bitty ones will maybe take 15 to 30 seconds. Mediums, kind of somewhere in between, maybe longer, maybe less, I don't know. Okay? So just know I'm cooking them all, but if I was doing a lot of them, I would be separating them by size because they will cook differently. Okay? The other thing that you can do before you cook them is if you see any that are super bright yellow, see how all these are pretty green? Maybe there's a hint of yellow. If there's a bright yellow one, get rid of it. That means it's not going to be tasty. It's kind of dried out or starting to rot. You want them nice and green. Okay? So again, in my basket, in my salty water, I'm going to drop them in. Move around. I got my ice water here ready to go. So what this does is, right, you'll see in a second, those favas have a thick outer skin that we want to get rid of. So this blanching is going to help loosen that up, right? Because when it goes from the hot to the cold, it'll separate a little bit better. The other thing that it's doing is it's actually cooking the fava a little bit. So now it's bubbling again, and what I'm going to look for is, I find when you see just a little bit of a tear on the outer skin, that it's ready to go. But I also may just judge it on, if they're nice and bright and green looking, that's what I want. I'm looking directly at it from above so I can see what's happening here. All right, lots of active water. Might turn this down just a touch so I don't burn my face off. When I can see it kind of separating, again, these are pretty young, so it's hard to say if it's gonna need a little bit longer because they're a little young and starchy. All right, I see a little tear on one of these. So I'm gonna take out of the water straight into my ice water, right? Okay. If you can see in the back here too, so I'm going to turn this off for now. But if you see in the back, I've moved my artichokes over there. Right. The one thing I forgot to tell you guys is that I put a little bit of olive oil in the water as well. Just helps the flavor. It also helps create a nice seal on top for the cartouche. I've got my sunchokes, though just came to a boil, so I'm going to turn them down to a simmer. I'm just going to keep an eye on it. Right? And again, if you can see on the artichokes, right, barely any movement, just a little bit, right? These just started to turn down. Okay? So now we move on to the next step on favas. All right, so the next step on favas is we're going to peel them. So again, you can see this kind of almost looks like a lima bean or something, right? But really, the fava is underneath this. So what I often will do is I'll kind of pinch it, right? Just make a little hole to make it easier for myself. And then you can kind of pop them right out. And that's your fava. That's the part you want. This part is quite tough, all right? You want to get rid of that. So that's the part we want, right in there, okay? Sometimes, again, if they've already torn themselves open a little bit, you can just pop, but I've learned that if you just use a little fingernail and kind of make a hole for it to pop out, then you can pop them right out. And this is also when you kind of go through and inspect. Like if there's one that's a little more yellow, you're not sure if it's actually going to be tasty. How this one's really yellow. I just want to get rid of that. I don't want to mix in with the other ones. So pay attention to what you're doing. Again, here's another yellowy one. Get rid of that. Nice and green. Take a corner. Oh, this one I thought was green. Yellowy. There we go. That's a nice bright green. Okay. So this takes a minute. Obviously, you can go faster than I'm doing it right now because I'm talking. Okay. But once you get a flow going, it goes a lot faster. Again, I'm going to go ahead and shuck all these, and we'll see what they look like. Boop. There are my favas done. Nice and shelled. Okay, here's my outer shell. This is the gold stuff right here, okay? So you can see how nice and bright and green they are. Fun little legume. Okay, taste one. It tastes like a cross between a bean and a pea. So it's got that green flavor to it. Yes, green is a flavor. And it's got a little bit of starchiness like a bean does. So tasty. Now, I just pop one in my mouth. You can eat them like this. You can serve them cold. You can also just quick saute, heat them up again. Okay? But again, we're trying to celebrate the green as much as possible. You saw how I blanched this. Most of the stuff I've cooked, very little cooking. We want to retain as much of that green, bright color. Not only that, but the textures and flavors. If I overcook these, they will get very mushy. So when you try and pop them out, it's just mush that comes out. So you got to be careful. Okay? It's definitely a technique you got to learn. I'm going to put these in the fridge, keep them chilled until we make our dish. Let's move on to asparagus. So these guys that I got are pretty short. Okay? Sometimes they're usually a little bit longer. Okay? That does not mean you have a whole lot of more asparagus. Okay? Because asparagus, I'll take this nice big one so you guys can see. Okay? The bottom part can be quite woody, and it's not pleasant to eat, and really you can't. It just feels like you're chewing on, I don't know what, right? It doesn't really break down. So what you got to do is, naturally, you kind of just bend it. You see where, right, bend. Right around here, I can feel that's the woody part, and I can snap it right off. Okay? When you do a bunch, though, don't sit there and just go through every single one and snap them off. Right? You can see how uneven and not very attractive. Once you kind of figure out where the woody part is on your asparagus, your bunch is pretty much going to be that. So the best thing to do is once you find it, right, instead of spending all that time snapping each one, okay, measure up and just trim it off. And that way you get a nice, clean bottom finish, right? Then they're all the same length, smooth bottom, it looks a lot better. And that woody part you just get rid of. Now, again, once you get the longer ones, that doesn't mean you get more asparagus. Sometimes they're like half woody bit. It's terrible when that happens, okay? But just be aware of it, okay? Again, these are very fresh, very young. Okay? I have a few that are a little big. When they're very, very skinny. So this is it's pretty close to a pencil, but it's still a little bit bigger. This is kind of a standard asparagus size. The pencil ones are very, very thin. For those, all you have to do is trim them, grill them, saute them, whatever you want. Okay? When they get a little bit bigger, you can still grill them, you can still eat them like this, no problem, right? But a lot of times what you'll do in a restaurant is you'll actually peel the asparagus because the outside of the asparagus is just a little bit chewy, right? And once you peel that outside, it's super tender and you get all that asparagus flavor. So the way you do that, again, springtime, get yourself a new peeler every time. This one, we'll hope it works. If not, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to take it, I'm going to show you up here. Right? So you just want to peel your asparagus. And the skin is quite thin, but again, it makes a huge difference. Put my trash bowl underneath me so I'm not just showing you bad habits here, guys. All right. And notice that I'm not, the tip you'll keep the same, right? You want to keep as much of that tip as you can. But just go around and get rid of that super dark outside. And that's what you do at most nice restaurants. Okay? I'll show you one more. So again, you're usually going to keep this very, very tip, right? And you're going to try and keep it as even as possible. Again, you want a nice sharp peeler. This is a Y peeler again. I cannot recommend spending a little money, guys. By a little bit of money, I mean like $2 to $5 for a good peeler. Make sure you get all of that. Don't do what I'm doing where I'm holding it up. I'm holding this up so you can see it. Normally you'll put it on your cutting board and peel like this. You get good even pressure. Right. The way I was just showing it so you can have a close-up, that's all. That's it. I'm going to go through, I'm going to peel all these, and then we're going to cook them. All right, so I've peeled my asparagus. They're pretty small. I got my hot water, right, salt. Instead of using the basket that I was using, I'm going to use a spider. The reason I'm going to do that is because if they put them in the basket, right, they're going to go up like this, and it's going to cook very unevenly. I want them laying down. Okay, so I'm just going to drop them in the water. They're not going to take very long because they are small, they're peeled, they're tender. I'm just trying to get them cooked a little bit. Okay. Again, I still have my ice water here, so they're going to go straight from the hot water into my ice water. What I'm looking for is, I often wait for the water to come back up, right, boiling. If I am not sure if they are cooked, right, what I can do is I can pull one out and I can just squeeze the end, the bottom part, right? And if it feels tender, right, it doesn't feel super hard, then they're ready to go. Again, these are pretty small, they're going to cook pretty fast. I got them to cook. I think we're ready there. Right? Yeah, see how nice and bright and green they are? Straight into the water. One behind. Right into the ice water. And again, these are big, so I don't worry about them just sitting in ice water like that. They're going to do great. Okay, I can pull them right out, no problem. Turn that off. I'm going to check. So I checked my artichokes just before I did this. They are done. I just turned them off. I'm going to leave them in the water for a little bit just so they don't get weird. I'm going to check my sunchokes here. They've been cooking for a while. Again, always use a paring knife when you're checking doneness. Don't use a big old knife. Okay? Big knives will tell you you'll be putting a lot more pressure because you can't feel anything. Whereas a paring knife, you can feel it just going. Oh, those are just done. Nailed it. Okay? So I'm going to take them out of the water and I'm just going to let them steam out. In fact, we can do it right now. I've got my spider. Just grab a sizzle platter. And I'm just going to pull them out. I'm going to let them cool off, just air temperature, NBD. Yeah. Sunchokes. Okay, so let's talk snap peas, sugar snap guys. So these seem pretty clean, okay? They're you can eat them straight like this, no big deal, okay? But for that extra bit, again, these seem pretty clean. Normally there's more of a distinct tip on each one, and there's this string that runs along here, especially as they get older, right? That if you've ever eaten these, you pull it away from your mouth, you get these big honking strings that aren't very comfortable. So what a lot of times is you can take your paring knife and just run it along the back and peel that off. See if I can get a good angle for you guys. Oops, broke that one. You can see the inside pea. Oh man, those are so sweet. Oh, I'm just gonna eat that. Again, sorry for my muncha. But you always at least want to take the tips off. And you can tell if there's a string. I can kind of taste the string in my mouth, but I can't quite get it. So normally you should be able to peel that right off if it's really distinct. But these don't really seem to have it. All right, just be aware that that is a possibility for these. All right, I'm just going to leave these alone. I think all I'm going to do for these guys is I'm just going to blanch them just like I have been. Again, they're super sweet and great this way. I might just want to give them a quick, literally 10 seconds in the water, pull them out, just to brighten them up, just to give them a little bit of shine to them. Okay? Last thing I'm going to do is process our kale. Now, I'm sure most of you remember from class or already know how to do this, but I'm going to show you just something a little bit different and what makes this kale a little bit special. Okay? So generally speaking, this is already washed. Right? You want to take the rib out. And for this, a lot of times you can leave it, depending on what you're doing. If you're slicing it really thin, but I like to take the rib out myself. Right? I like to start it and then pull it, and then you've got this rib. If you want to cook the ribs too, you still want to separate them. All right? Because they cook differently. You're going to cook your ribs first. Or rather, not your rib, your stem. All right? I'm not going to worry about the stem today. I just want that big, beautiful leaf. Okay? Black kale. Oh, I'm so excited. Trust me, I'm not one to get excited about kale, but I do love black kale. Okay, so we're going to get rid of those. Now from here, okay, I can cut them bite-sized pieces. I can go straight from raw cooking them. Okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to chiffonade all of this. Just going to stack a couple. Roll it up best I can. I'm going to have at it. Move this out of the way a little bit. And when you chiffonade it, again, you're breaking up those long, tough strands. Okay? And then even from here, you chiffonade it, you can have a nice big salad. You can eat it raw, just like this. But again, I wouldn't recommend it just munch on the leaf. You definitely want to shift. Okay? Because you're breaking it down. You're helping that cellulose, the cell walls break down a bit. Nice and thin. All the way across. Okay? Now I can take it, right? I can fluff it. Look at that nice big pile, right? Again, I can eat this raw, just like this. I mean, I want to do stuff to it, but now it's because we've sliced it so thin, right? And because it's slightly more tender than just regular kale, okay? It's not going to be as abrasive on us. I'm going to put this in a bowl. I'm going to do the rest. Now, I'm going to separate because I'm going to do 2 dishes for you. Weren't expecting that, were you? Ho, ho, ho. Okay. I'm still going to shift it though. The reason I still want to chiffonade for both the things, again, I'm going to cook half of it and I'm going to keep half of it raw. But when you chiffonade it, again, it cooks so much faster. That way you keep that bright greenness. You don't have to worry about overcooking it. Well, I mean, you do because it cooks so quickly. But it makes everything so much brighter and fresher, right? Because you're cooking it so quickly. Because I'm going to cook this one, you can see there's some slightly bigger pieces. I'm not as worried about it. We're going to keep it rustico. Okay? So we got that. Let's see how much that gives me. Oh, that's more than enough. I need to keep the rest. Okay? So again, you can do anything you want with this kale for sure. This is what I'm going to do. I've got my nice fluffy kale. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a wee bit of salt. And by wee, I mean this much. Okay? And then from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to massage this kale. So the salt is going to help bring out some of the water. And it's going to make it even more tender. Okay? With this motion, I'm breaking down the cell walls. I'm seasoning it with the salt. I'm massaging in that salt. And as you do this, right, you're going to see it get wet and it's going to release some moisture as well. And it just adds a little bit, again, of salt and makes it just that much more tender. Okay? Notice I'm just kind of using my fingers, right? Definitely it's a massage. And you don't want too much salt. You just want the salt there to help break it down. And I don't know if you can see already that it kind of looks a little damper now. Right? I'm helping to break that stuff down. And it's going to look a lot smaller too because I'm getting rid of that air and the fluffiness. Okay, but I'm going to eat this raw or prepare it raw. So this little bit of massaging does so much for the texture and the color. All right? It almost looks, again, wet because it's releasing water now. All right, I'm just making sure I'm getting all the salt that I put in there. I mean, it's maybe 1/8 of a teaspoon that I put in there. If I was doing a lot, I still wouldn't use much more than that. I just want enough to help it. I can smell the kale now too. Right? It's also similar, guys, to how you start making sauerkraut. Is that you start with a little bit of salt and you kind of massage it so it starts breaking itself down. Right, it's sticking to my hand now. Yeah, I can keep massaging this, but I kind of like where it's at right now. I can feel it's broken down. Now, look compared to the stuff that was raw that I just cut. Right, you can see the difference for sure. See how much darker this is? You can see how this is lighter and still pretty fluffy. Right? This is nice and dark because, again, I've massaged it, broken down those cell walls, letting a little moisture go, I've tenderized it. Okay? Great. So let's do our first dish. Okay? I have our sunchokes. I just kind of cut them into funky shapes. Right there, it's already cooked, ready to go. We've got our artichoke here. So here's a whole one, and the other one I just sliced. Nice and thin. These are cold, right? Cooked all the way. I can eat them right now if I want to. Okay, no problem. They're all the way cooked. Delicious. All right, but I'm going to do a little something different. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a salad, but I want some crunchy. I want some different textures. I want some different flavors, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little texture to these sunchokes and this artichoke. I've got a non-stick pan. If you don't have a non-stick, that's fine. All right. Heat that up. I'm going to put a little bit of butter in my pan. And this is just cold butter. It can be room temp. It doesn't matter. Room temp will probably warm up a little bit faster. Notice I've got like medium high. And I just want to melt this butter and get it hot. And then I'm going to do my artichoke and my sunchoke. And I'm not going to cook it for very long. I just want brown. Okay? Again, just a little bit of flavor. Like, obviously these have flavor. Obviously they have different texture. But again, let's be a little creative. Okay? Keep moving that butter around. If it goes a little bit brown, I don't hate it, but I'm also, again, not, lower that a little bit. Not looking to necessarily brown it. The butter, that is. The stuff, yes. So I'm going to go ahead and do my artichoke first. I'm going to do that whole artichoke, because why not? Okay. Now I'm going to turn it up just a little bit. Again, I'm looking to get a little bit of brown, infuse some of that butter in there. Always want to use a rubber spatula, nothing metal on non-stick, guys. Take care of your stuff. Notice I kind of just have them more or less in an even layer. Gonna give it a quick flip. See, I've got some brown edges there. Yeah, that's what I want. Because I'm making it, I don't necessarily need them to be hot. Again, I'm just trying to get some crispy edges, a little bit of butter infusion. Great. Now I've got my sizzle platter. I'm gonna turn this off just for safety reasons, and I'm gonna slide these on there. I'm gonna save as much butter in the pan as I can. Might add a little bit more. I already know the pan's hot. I'm just going to add a tiny bit more butter, because butter. That's a little too hot, I think. There we go. See, I'm getting some browning butter. Not the worst thing in the world, but I just want to make sure it doesn't go over. Crisp up some of these sunchokes. I want to try and get the white bit crispity, so I want to make sure it's touching the pan. I had some of these just barely cooked, you know, or rather, what am I trying to say? Just cooled. They're delicious. They're super sweet. They're very tender. They're not starchy at all. It's really hard to describe without, and they're almost like floral. They're just so really interesting and really special, you know? So I don't want to fuss with them too much. I just want to pick up a little bit extra. But crispy sunchokes are some of my favorite things. You can also just throw these in the oven, roast them. Yeah, and you can kind of treat it like a root vegetable. But again, I'm just trying to get a little something different for this salad. Yeah, you can see some of that. Some of the little edges are brown now. Yeah, that's what I want. Again, nothing crazy. They're already cooked, so I'm not trying to cook them. It's more about texture variation. Okay. I think I got enough there. There we go. Now let's plate. So let's plate this salad. Okay, I've got this plate, got a little bit of a rim. All right, it's not the most beautiful plate in the world, but it definitely will do. I have this stuff I made. It's whipped feta. It's literally feta, which is just the type of cheese usually made out of sheep milk. We can get it everywhere in Chicago because there's a lot of Greeks here. Okay? Took it, put it in the food processor with a little bit of cream, and now it's kind of this whipped texture. So I'm going to do a nice big smear of this. Right? Feta is pretty briny, salty. This might be a little too much, but I'm going to move it around. I definitely want to see it poking around the edges because I'm going to put that salad right in the middle. This is a bit, we'll make a big salad. How about that? Okay. This is room temperature. It might spread a little bit more evenly, but I'm not too worried about it. Okay. So we're going to do some whipped feta at the bottom. I've got my massaged kale here. Okay. Hasn't done anything other than sit here. I'm going to take a little bit of the ramps, the tops. I just chiffonaded them, and I'm just going to put a little bit in here. Okay, because it is quite pungent. I don't want it to be too super soft. All right, so we got that. Okay. I'm going to do a little bit. I just cut our snap peas on a long bias. That's it. These are the raw ones. Just so they're a little bit different. All right, a little bit of different texture. Put some of that in there. All right, definitely going to do some of our favas. Just a little pinch. All right, so we're getting some like starchy, we're getting some sweet, we're getting some almost seaweed-like brininess from that kale. Okay, I've got some of our fresh garbanzos. Definitely going to do some of those in there. All right, again, those kind of taste like peas. All right, and then I've got our artichoke and sun chips. Okay, so I'm just going to take my tweezer. I'm going to put some down on the bottom. I kind of wanted my idea, and I don't know why this is my thought process, but it is. Okay. Is kind of like these are the rocks, right? Odd numbers, let's remember that. I'm going to try not to fiddle with this too much. This is not a plating video, this is a springtime video. So, you're not going to see this as much, even though I'm taking care to place them. You're not going to see them because I'm going to put a lot of this green stuff on top, right? Maybe one more for good. I know I said odd numbers, but I want one poking out at the end. Before I do anything else, before I forget, I'm going to throw some radishes. I just sliced them, these giant radishes, right? I like these rounds. I like different, so there's a lot of different textures. There's a lot of crunch, there's a lot of green, right? A lot of snap. I want a little bit of color in there, okay? So these are all different cuts, right? I got chiffonade, I got bias cut, I've got whole garbanzos, whole favas. That's what I want, okay? And because I'm going to keep it super fresh, my vinaigrette is essentially just going to be some lemon juice and some olive oil and a little bit of salt and pepper, and that's it. All right, not like a traditional vinaigrette where I've mixed it together. I don't know why I shook my olive oil, but I did. I want a good hit of olive oil. All right, a little pinch of salt. Always season your greens, guys. Always season your greens. And then a little bit of black pepper. I'm just going to use my hand to toss because I feel like it. All right, just make sure everything's kind of mixed together. All right. So now, I'll take some of that, put it right over all that. And you've noticed I kind of left some of the bigger stuff off to the side, some of these radishes. I want to be able to kind of put those on top. They're already seasoned, so I don't necessarily want to grab more. Alright, you could do this, put some of these on there, right? Have those kind of stand out a little bit. Fact, I think I want a few more of these snap pea things on top, just so they pop a little bit more. All right, nice. All right, so I can see so I've got my creamy whipped, right, feta. I've got my buttery, slightly caramelized artichoke and sunchoke. I've got like my tender kale, my snappy peas, my sharp radish. Okay. And then I'm going to do a little extra, just a straight up feta that was a little bit crumbly. Just to kind of help it pop a little bit more, right? It helps bring out the green. And then I've also got a little bit extra parsley, right? These are all greens, I know, but more green, different greens. I love it. And there's our salad. Okay, I had to turn the camera back on to tell you guys how good this salad is. It's ridiculous. It's like creamy feta. It's just a little bit of salt. The kale almost tastes, it really does almost taste like seaweed. And there's that like sweet floral flavor from the sunchokes. And the radishes are like snappy and a little bit sharp, like a little bit spicy. And then every so often I get a garbanzo or a fava and it's so fresh. I'm gonna take one more bite in front of you so you feel jealous. Oh man, it's so good. So worth all that effort. All right, so the second dish is going to be a pasta primavera. Primavera means spring. All right, we're gonna keep it super light. We're gonna use all that veg that we just processed, right? I've got some casarecce pasta that I've pre-cooked, okay? I've got all the other veg. I'm going to use a stainless steel here, and I want to get that pan nice and hot. I'm going to use a little bit of butter, a little bit of pasta water, because you should always save some of that pasta water. That is liquid gold when you're making pasta, guys. While that heats up, guys, I want to show you the asparagus. So after I took it out of the water, I just put it on some sea folds, which is this type of paper towel. And just let it sit there. And the reason I did that is you want to take off as much water as possible. If they sit in water, they get weird and gummy. All right, I sliced it a little bit here, just so I could throw them in the pasta right now. I just wanted you to know that. Definitely nice and hot now. I'm going to throw a little bit of butter right in there. And a touch of olive oil. As soon as this butter melts, turn that down now actually. All right, I just want nice hot melty butter. And again, we cooked everything already. The only thing that I'm also going to add is these radish greens. Oh, what? You thought I wasn't going to use them, but I am. Radish greens. I'm going to throw those in. All right, they're washed. And I just want to wilt them a little bit. Right, along with those radish greens, I'm going to throw in our shredded kale. Right. Chiffonaded, washed, the whole shebang-a-bang. I'm just looking to wilt them. Right? And wilting just means, they don't look as stiff. I want that butter to get in there. I'm going to hit it with a touch of salt. Just salt. I've still got some of those sunchokes and those artichokes. I'm going to throw them in now because they have a little bit of butter. They've already got a pre-browning on them. Right? I just want to wake everything up now. If it looks like it's getting too hot, I'm just going to turn down the heat. Okay? You see how much these greens kind of cook down? Right, I'm re-waking up those artichoke, that sunchoke. As that goes down, I've got some bias cut. These are blanched, okay, unlike the raw ones. 10 seconds max. In the water, 10 seconds, into the ice water, that's it. Slice them. All right, a little bit of sweetness there. I've also got some of those ramp bottoms. I'm going to treat it like garlic, essentially. All right, I sliced it real thin. I don't need to use a ton. It's real pungent. I've also got my garbanzos. There's some garbanzos in there. Heck yeah. Got my asparagus. Oh yes. Oh my. Okay. Everything's already been cooked, okay, except for the kale and those radish greens, so we don't need to go crazy. We're just trying to warm everything up, okay? Maybe cook that ramp just a little bit so it kind of infuses a little. If for any reason, okay, it feels like it's sticking a little bit or whatever, that's what you got the pasta water for, okay? I'm gonna throw in just a splish splash. All right, so it kind of starts making a little bit of a sauce with that bit of butter in there. Yeah. Oh yeah, you see that? I hope so. Ooh. Okay, so now I'm gonna throw in just a handful of this pasta. Again, this is already cooked. It's cooled at room temperature. I'm gonna make this pretty veg heavy. I'm not gonna use all that pasta. And then again, I'm just trying to warm it up a little bit. All right, get it coated with a little bit of that pasta water. Again, I'm gonna throw just a touch more in there. Do the heat. I'm also gonna throw in a splash of lemon juice. What that does is it just adds a little bit of acidity to kind of brighten everything up a little bit. I'm gonna hit it with a little bit more salt. Just a wee bit. All right, because all those veggies are already seasoned. I think pea just went flying, but that's okay. Oh my, yes. You know, if I really wanted to, I could use some of that whipped feta in here just to make a little bit of sauce, but I kind of, again, want to celebrate the veg in this. All right, and all I'm doing, I just want a little bit more dryness. Make sure everything's nice and hot. I think I'm there. Let's plate. So I got this nice bowl here. I'm just going to very rustico. That's a big bowl of pasta. Feeling big portions today, apparently. That's all right. Okay. Move this so it's a little bit safer over here. Okay. And again, I've got some parsley. If I had some parm or something, maybe I'd sprinkle a little. But again, I just really want to have those veg without anything else. And there she is, pasta primavera. All right, guys, so I hope you guys enjoyed all that springtime stuff and you learned about some new produce out there. Get out there, see the markets. The farmers markets are going to start soon. By the end of April, beginning of May is usually when you can go out. Look at some stuff, try some things, all right? Spring is about trying those fresh produce so that you can try them. Try, guys, all right? I'm definitely going to eat this as my own little celebration of spring. If you guys want any recipes, you know how to email. Have a good time. Enjoy till next time.